I evicted my parents on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky feels like it's holding its breath. I remember standing on the front walkway, the concrete still damp from an early drizzle, listening to my mother cry behind the door. My father's voice was low and angry, pressed flat by disbelief. The locksmith waited beside me, pretending not to hear any of it. I kept my eyes on the peeling blue paint of the door, the same color it had been since I was 12, and thought, so this is what the end looks like. But that morning didn't begin the story. It only finished the first sentence. To understand how I got there, with a folded court order in my pocket and my hands shaking despite my best efforts, you have to go back to when my sister and I were kids, back to a house where love was measured in attention and money, and there was never enough of either to go around evenly. My sister Elena was 2 years older than me. From the time she learned to smile on command, she had a gift. She made people feel good just by existing. Teachers adored her. Neighbors brought her cookies. My parents looked at her like she was proof they'd done something right. I was quieter. I liked books. I noticed things. Those traits didn't photograph well. At dinner, my father would ask, "How was school today?" His eyes always found Elena first. "Great," she'd say, tossing her hair. "Mrs. Carter says I might skip a grade in math." My mother would beam. "Of course you might. You've always been special." Then my father would turn to me, almost as an afterthought. "And you?" "It was fine," I'd say. If I mentioned a good grade, my mother would nod politely. And if I mentioned a problem, she'd sigh. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" she'd ask, not unkindly, just tired. The imbalance followed us everywhere, but it became undeniable once money entered the picture. When Elena turned 16, my parents surprised her with a used but shiny silver sedan. I remember standing in the driveway, the smell of gasoline sharp in the air, watching her run her hands over the hood like it was a living thing. "For me?" she squealed. My father laughed. "For our girl. You deserve it." I was 14 then. 2 years later, when I got my license, I asked carefully, "So, what about a car for me?" My mother didn't even look up from the sink. "We can't afford that twice," she said. "You understand." So I worked. After school, weekends, summers. I bought my own rusted hatchback with a cracked taillight and a radio that only played static. When I pulled into the driveway with it, my father nodded once. "Good," he said. "Builds character." College was worse. Elena announced she wanted to attend a private university out of state, one with glossy brochures and tuition numbers that made my stomach tighten. My parents sat at the kitchen table, calculators out, papers spread like a battlefield. "We'll make it work," my mother said firmly. "This is an investment." They refinanced the house, took out loans. Elena left that fall with brand new luggage and a tearful goodbye. When it was my turn, I applied to a local state school and came home with a stack of acceptance letters and partial scholarships. "I'll cover the rest," I said. "I can work." My father leaned back in his chair. "That's sensible. No refinancing, no loans. Just a quiet expectation that I'd handle it." I did. I worked nights at a grocery store, mornings in the library, weekends tutoring. I learned how to stretch ramen into 3 meals and how to smile when exhaustion felt like a second skin. Every holiday, Elena came home with stories. Internships arranged through friends of friends, trips my parents helped fund. Just little things, charged to credit cards I wasn't allowed to touch. "Don't be jealous," my mother told me once, mistaking my silence for envy. "You know your sister needs more support. She's delicate." Delicate. That word stuck with me. After graduation, Elena drifted. Jobs never quite fit her. Apartments were always temporary. Somehow, she was always just one emergency away from needing help. I, on the other hand, stayed. I got a steady job in finance, saved aggressively, learned contracts and interest rates and the quiet power of paperwork. When my parents struggled with bills, I helped. Never loudly, never asking for thanks. "You're so reliable," my father said once, clapping my shoulder. "It's a relief." It wasn't meant as praise, it was a role assignment. Years passed. The house aged. The blue paint peeled more each winter. Elena moved back in. For a few months, that turned into years. She took the master bedroom. I slept in my old room when I visited. The door still scarred from where I'd taped posters as a teenager. One evening, over coffee gone cold, my mother sighed. "We're thinking about the future." "What kind of future?" I asked. "Estate planning," my father said. "Nothing dramatic, just being responsible." Elena smiled softly, eyes downcast. "I worry about them," she said. "About the house." "So do I said, and I meant it. My father folded his hands. "That's why we need to make some decisions soon." There was a pause then, heavy and strange. My mother reached for Elena's hand. "We just want to make sure everyone is taken care of," she said. I nodded, unaware that I was standing at the edge of something vast and dark, that the ground beneath our family was already shifting. At the time, I thought the worst had already happened, that I understood the rules, the favoritism, the quiet disappointments. I didn't know that the real betrayal was still ahead, waiting patiently, like a document unsigned but ready. And it was about to change everything. The line was crossed on a Sunday afternoon, the kind my family always pretended was peaceful. My mother cooked pot roast. The windows were open. Elena hummed as she set the table, moving through the kitchen like she belonged to it more than the rest of us. I noticed she'd dressed carefully. Soft sweater, neutral makeup, the version of herself she used when she wanted to look earnest. My father cleared his throat once we were seated. He didn't meet my eyes. "We've made some decisions," he said. I set my fork down slowly. The clink against the plate sounded too loud. "About what?" "The house," my mother said. She reached for her water, took a sip, then another. "And about what happens if, well, when we're gone." I nodded. "Okay." Elena's hand found my mother's arm. "We just want to be transparent," she said softly. That word, transparent, would come back to me later, sharp and ironic. My father slid a folder across the table. It was thick, manila, and the corners worn. "We met with a lawyer," he said. "Estate planning, like we mentioned." I opened the folder. Inside were copies, titles, summaries, typed paragraphs full of language I recognized from work. Legal, careful, final. My eyes moved quickly, trained to scan. Then they stopped. The house, was listed under a transfer clause. Sole beneficiary, Elena. I looked up. "This must be a draft." My mother shook her head. "No." There was a ringing in my ears, low and steady. "So, what does this mean, exactly?" "It means," my father said, choosing each word like it might explode, "that the house will go to your sister." "And me?" I asked. Elena inhaled, visibly bracing herself. "You're doing so well," she said. "You don't need it like I do." I stared at her. "That's not what I asked." My mother's voice softened. "You'll be provided for in other ways." "What ways?" I asked. She hesitated. "There's a small cash provision." "How small?" I asked. My father rubbed his forehead. "It's fair." That word again. Fair. It had followed me my entire life like a dare. I flipped pages, my fingers cold. Numbers jumped out at me. The house's value. Something I knew intimately because I'd helped pay the property taxes when my parents fell behind. The loan balances, ones I'd helped restructure. The equity, built partly with my money, quietly transferred over years. Elena, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Did you know about this before today? She looked down, then up again, eyes glossy. I didn't ask for it. That wasn't an answer. I turned to my parents. Why? My mother's lips pressed together. Because she needs stability. And I don't? I asked. My father finally met my eyes. There was a flicker of something there. Guilt, maybe. But it passed. You've always landed on your feet. I laughed then, a short sound that surprised all of us. Because I had to. The room went quiet. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. I helped with this house, I said. I paid bills. I covered repairs. I sent money when you didn't ask but needed it. And we're grateful, my mother said quickly. This isn't about gratitude. No, I said. It's about trust. Elena's chair scraped as she stood. This is exactly why I didn't want to do this together, she said, voice trembling. You're making it ugly. I looked at her. You're taking our parents' house. She flinched, just slightly. I'm protecting our family. My father raised his hand. Enough. This is settled. That was the moment something inside me went very still. Settled, I repeated. Yes, he said. The paperwork is ready. We're signing next week. I closed the folder carefully, aligning the edges. My hands were steady now. I want a copy of everything. My mother frowned. Why? Because, I said, I work with documents like this, and because I deserve to understand what's being done. My father hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Dinner ended shortly after. No dessert, no small talk. Elena disappeared to her room. My parents busied themselves with dishes that didn't need washing. I left with the folder under my arm and a hollow ache spreading behind my ribs. In the parking lot, Elena caught up to me. Please don't do this, she said. Do what? I asked. Turn this into a war, she said, tears sliding down her cheeks. I can't handle that. I studied her face, the way her mouth turned down, the practiced vulnerability. You already did. Her eyes hardened for just a second before softening again. I just need the house, she whispered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. I just don't agree. She watched me walk away without calling after me. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. I read every line. I noticed what was included and what wasn't. I noticed the dates, the witnesses, the lawyer's name, and I noticed something else. Something subtle but wrong, like a misaligned seam in an expensive suit. It was small, easy to miss, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was structural. Then it was deeper than any of them realized. I didn't confront anyone right away. That surprised even me. Instead, I did what I had trained myself to do over years of surviving quietly. I sat with the discomfort and let it talk. I reread the documents under a brighter lamp. I printed copies. I highlighted clauses. I cross-referenced dates with bank statements I still had archived, the ones I'd never bothered to delete because some part of me had always believed paperwork was a kind of memory that didn't lie. The flaw I'd noticed that first night wasn't dramatic. No forged signature, no missing page. It was a date. The will had been executed on a Thursday in late March. According to the notary stamp, all parties were present. But I knew my father had been hospitalized that entire week. I pulled up my calendar, then my email, and then the thread with my mother. Dad's surgery went well. Visiting hours limited. Please don't come yet. I felt my pulse slow as the pieces clicked together. Either the date was wrong, or someone wasn't telling the truth. I didn't sleep much that week. I went to work, smiled in meetings, ran numbers for clients who trusted me with their futures. At night, I dug. The lawyer listed on the documents had a small practice across town. I booked a consultation under my own name, not mentioning my parents. When I sat across from him, he scanned my face, polite and distant. I slid a copy of the will across the desk. "I'm reviewing a family document," I said. "I just want to understand the process." He adjusted his glasses. "I remember this case." My stomach tightened. "You do?" "Yes," he said. Your parents were very clear." "Were they?" I asked gently. "Because my father was in the hospital that day." The lawyer frowned. He looked again at the date, then at the notary seal. "That's odd," he said. "Is it possible," I asked, "for a will to be backdated?" His mouth tightened. "It shouldn't be." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he leaned back. "If there's a concern, you should speak to an attorney." "I am," I said. He didn't smile. That night, I went one step further. Elena had always been careless with technology, passwords reused, devices left unlocked. When we were younger, I used to remind her. "You're paranoid," she'd laugh. Maybe. Or maybe I'd learned early that information was power. When she asked me to help fix her laptop, "It's being weird again." I didn't hesitate. I backed up her files like she asked, and I saw the folder. It wasn't hidden. It was labeled plainly, almost arrogantly, House. Inside were scanned documents, drafts, emails. And then there was the recording, an audio file, short, 6 minutes. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I remember noticing how calm my breathing was, like my body already knew what it was about to hear and had decided to brace quietly. I clicked play. My mother's voice came first, nervous. Is this okay?" Then the lawyer. "As long as your husband agrees." A pause. Elena spoke next, clear, confident. "He doesn't need to be here. He already said yes." My heart started pounding. "But the date," my mother said. "We'll use today's," Elena replied. "It's cleaner." Another pause, papers shifting. Then my father's voice. But wrong. Slurred. Distant. "I trust you," he murmured. "You know best." The lawyer hesitated. "He sounds medicated." "He's fine," Elena said sharply. "Aren't you, Dad?" A weak chuckle. "Of course." I stopped the recording there, my hands shaking now. The room suddenly too small. Undeniable. That was the word that came to mind. I listened again. And again. I saved copies in 3 different places. Cloud. External drive. Email to myself. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. For weeks after that, I said nothing. I answered my parents' calls like everything was normal. I listened to my mother talk about paint colors Elena was considering for the house. I listened to my father joke about how good it would be to leave something solid behind. Elena grew bolder. "You should come by more," she said once, smiling over coffee. "Before things change." I met her gaze. "I will." Inside, something hard was forming. Not rage, not even sadness. Resolve. I consulted a lawyer of my own. I played the recording. I showed the emails. I laid out the financial contributions I'd made over the years, the quiet transfers, the repairs. He listened without interrupting. Finally, he said, "You have a case." I nodded. "I know." "Do you want to proceed quietly?" he asked. "Or publicly," I said, "but not yet." I waited for the right moment, a moment where denial would be impossible, where excuses would collapse under the weight of witnesses. That moment came sooner than I expected. My parents decided to host a family gathering. A celebration, they said, to announce their finalized plans and bring everyone together. Elena sent the invitations herself. I smiled when I read it, because I knew something she didn't. the truth. When spoken aloud, doesn't just change the future, it rewrites the past. And soon, everyone in that room would hear it. The gathering was held in the living room, the same one where Elena had once practiced piano while my parents applauded every wrong note. Folding chairs lined the walls. A table of finger food sat untouched in the corner. A few relatives stood in small clusters, murmuring, glasses in hand. The air smelled like coffee and anticipation. Elena stood near the fireplace, radiant and calm, playing the role perfectly. My mother hovered beside her, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her blouse. My father sat in his armchair, smiling faintly, already tired. When I walked in, the room shifted. Elena's smile tightened. Just a fraction. "You came," she said. "I said I would," I replied. My lawyer stood quietly near the doorway. A family friend, also a notary, stood a few feet away. No one questioned why they were there. They assumed professionalism meant approval. My father cleared his throat and raised his glass. "Thank you all for coming. We wanted to share something important." My mother nodded. "A decision about our future, about the house." Elena reached for her hand. Cameras came out. Someone whispered, "How lovely." I waited. "The house," my father continued, "will be passed on to Elena." A ripple of polite applause moved through the room. I stepped forward. "Before that happens," I said evenly, "there's something everyone should hear." The applause died. Elena turned sharply. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I said. My mother frowned. "What are you doing?" "Making things transparent," I replied, meeting Elena's eyes. I nodded to my lawyer. He connected my phone to the speaker system Elena had set up for music. The room hummed softly as the connection locked in. Elena shook her head. "Stop." I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. Is this okay?" Her face drained of color. The lawyer's voice followed. Then Elena's, calm, assured. "He doesn't need to be here. He already said yes." A murmur moved through the crowd. My father sat up straighter. "What is this?" I didn't answer. "We'll use today's. It's cleaner." Elena lunged toward the speaker. My lawyer stepped smoothly in front of her. Then my father's voice. Weak, medicated, unmistakable. "I trust you." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. The recording ended. Silence fell like a dropped plate. Sharp, absolute. My father looked at Elena, really looked at her, confusion and dawning horror crossing his face. "When was this?" Elena's lips parted. No sound came out. "That," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest, "was recorded while Dad was hospitalized. Sedated. The will was dated for a day he physically could not have been present." My mother whispered, "Elena." "I was helping," Elena said, her voice cracking. "You were sick. Someone had to make decisions. You forged a future," I said quietly. Relatives shifted uncomfortably. Someone set their glass down too hard. The family friend, the notary, stepped forward. "That seal," she said, pointing at the document on the table, "is not valid if the signer wasn't competent." My father's face went slack. "You lied to us." Elena shook her head wildly. "I did this for us, for the family." "No," my mother said, tears spilling now. "You did this for yourself." I took a breath. "Then there's more." I laid out copies of bank transfers, receipts, repair invoices, years of financial support. Quiet contributions, undeniable numbers. "I helped keep this house standing," I said, "and you tried to take it from me by deception." My father closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "Why didn't we see it?" Elena sank into a chair, her face pale, her performance finally over. I'm contesting the will, I said, and I'm reclaiming what was taken under false pretenses. No one argued. No one could. That was the moment justice entered the room. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. And it changed everything. Justice doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in paperwork, court dates, and long stretches of silence where you're forced to sit with who people really are. The will was overturned within months. The recording made it impossible to argue intent or competence. The backdated documents unraveled under scrutiny. The judge's voice was calm, almost bored, as he explained that the transfer was invalid, the actions improper, the outcome clear. The house reverted to my parents. But that wasn't the end. I didn't evict them out of anger. I did it because the truth had changed the structure of our family, and pretending otherwise would have been another kind of lie. After the ruling, my father asked me to meet him at the house. Alone. He looked smaller when he opened the door. Older. The blue paint peeled even more now, curling away like it was tired of holding on. "We never protected you," he said without preamble. I nodded. There was no point denying it. "We let you carry weight that wasn't yours," my mother added from the kitchen doorway. She couldn't quite meet my eyes. "And now," I said gently, "I need you to understand something." I explained the liens, the debts, the truth they hadn't wanted to see, that the house, as it stood, was no longer sustainable without my continued financial support. "I won't keep doing that," I said. "Not like before." My father swallowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm selling the house," I said, "or I'm moving into it. But I won't be funding it from the outside." They chose not to move. Pride is a stubborn thing. So I gave notice, followed the law, waited. The morning the locksmith came, my mother cried. My father stood stiffly, staring at the floor. I felt sad, but I didn't feel guilty. Because boundaries aren't punishments. They're truths, finally spoken out loud. Elena didn't come that day. She'd moved out weeks earlier. After the court ruling, after the silence between us became too wide to cross, I heard she told people a different version of the story, that she'd been misunderstood, that she'd been betrayed. I let her. Some stories don't need correcting. Months later, the house sold. I split the proceeds fairly, according to the law. Not favoritism, not emotion. I bought a place of my own. Quiet, bright, mine. My parents and I speak occasionally now. Carefully. With honesty that feels new and fragile, like a muscle that hasn't been used before. As for Elena, we don't speak. And that's okay. Because peace doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from finally choosing yourself and walking forward without looking back.